Winning Blueprint presents.
In the lab room, Houston, Texas.
I don't know about you, but me being an ultra competitive person, I hate admitting when people are better than me. And you know it. You know it when you see it. It doesn't take much. You could be out at the basketball court. You could be tying your shoes and you look up. You're like, man, damn, that guy's good. Or you could be playing baseball, and I was a baseball guy, I was a football guy, I was a basketball guy, and you'd see a picture on the mound, you're like, man, damn, that guy's good. You know when you're overmatched. No one wants to admit that. I never do. And that's probably one of my greatest faults, is that I can't admit when someone's better than me. You got to show me. I'm not going to allow myself to be beaten, or at least give up before it's even gotten started. You're going to have to go out and prove that you're better than me. Even though I know you're probably better than me. And that's anything that I do. And that's how I feel about the Houston Texans. They're okay, but there are a lot of teams that are just better than them. And I don't know if they'll ever get over that hump. I just don't know if the Texans will ever be good enough. I think everything would have to align perfectly for the Houston Texans to really get to that next level. Like, all the good teams in the AFC would have to lose without the Texans having to play them. I think that's how I feel, because I don't think the Texans are good enough. I just think the Texans are really solid. But there's always someone out there that's better than them at all times. And with that being said, this is the lab follow-up for the Houston Texans. Thank you for joining me here on the program. I am Lou, and you never thought that the Houston Texans had a shot to beat the New England Patriots. Did anybody? Even if you're a Houston Texans fan, you had to know, man, we really blew our opportunity by not getting home field advantage. And so let's start with the 2012 season, and let's rewind and go back to the beginning, and we'll find ourselves back at the end, and we'll pick up right where I just left off. So look, the Texans started this season out red hot. And, you know, the Texans last year, they were a feel-good story. No Matt Schaub. They still found a way to make it to the postseason after everyone thought they would start to go into a tailspin after Schaub got injured. TJ Yates comes in. He's a afterthought at the quarterback position because Matt Leinart was supposed to be the backup. He gets injured in his first game. And so TJ Yates comes in, and he was just an arm at the combine. He wasn't even really invited to show off his skills. He was just invited as a guy that could throw at the combine. The Texans drafted him with a late round draft selection. He makes the team as a third, quarterback, an emergency guy essentially. And he's thrust into action. He gets it done. His defense is playing really well. They make it to the postseason. They win a game against Cincinnati. They go on a road, and you're telling yourself, if they had Matt Schaub against Baltimore, that was a winnable game. But TJ Yates just wasn't good enough. So you say, hey, with a few more tweaks here, Matt Schaub back in the fold, maybe this team can take that next step. But it seemed like everyone else got better around them. Peyton Manning showed up in Denver. All of a sudden, Denver is really good. Baltimore is playing better football. And so you see all these teams around, and you say, man, the Texans are good. They're better because Schaub is back in the fold. But are they good enough to beat the better teams, the New Englands, the Pittsburghs, the Denvers, the Baltimores? Are they good enough to beat those teams? The regular season was supposed to be a very telling time to see if they, in fact, could beat those teams. They started the season 5-0, and one of those victories was over Denver. So you say, okay, that's a very good win on the road. And again, I took that game with a grain of salt because Peyton Manning was still getting his feet wet. He still was kind of reacclimating himself to the NFL game, the speed of the game, live bullets flying by his head. He still needed time to readjust to his teammates, and they needed time to adjust to him. So I kind of took that game with a grain of salt, but still, that's a very good win. You're on the road, you go out, you get it done. And they really beat Denver up. That game was not as close as the score indicated. So you start 5-1, but then here comes one of those big tests at home against Green Bay. You fail it miserably. It's like akin to getting a 59 on a test that you studied for really hard. It was a primetime game. The Texans had never been on Sunday Night Football since they moved to NBC. Here they are, Sunday night, first time, crowds raucous, and you get your brains bashed in by the Green Bay Packers. So you study hard for the test, you feel good about it, and then you get your paper back and you got a 59. You got an F. So now I'm starting to think maybe this Texans team isn't who I thought they were. Here comes another test. We're supposed to, and I dubbed this game the game that I was going to figure out who's who. It was my who's who game. Who are you? I was supposed to figure out were the Chicago Bears for real or were the Houston Texans for real. I was supposed to figure out some things, iron out some issues that I had with some teams, and figure out who was legit. From that game, I learned absolutely nothing other than the Houston Texans football team was more suited for playing in the rain. That's all I learned. It was a monsoon. It was a mud storm. It was rain everywhere, and it was wet. And Houston just ran the football and made less turnovers and won the football game. So that was a little disappointing, but they still got it done. So all of a sudden, the Texans start the season 11-1, and you're like, wow, man, the Texans aren't playing. Now, it's not always the prettiest. The thing that really annoyed me about the Texans all season long was they would put it on cruise control. They knew they were better than a lot of the teams like Jacksonville, like Tennessee, and they would jump out to a 14-0 lead and then put it on cruise control and win the game 23-10. Instead of just absolutely throttling the team. I wanted to see Houston exert dominance. I wanted them to have that killer instinct. Beat someone 52-7. Beat up on someone 41-10. It wasn't in their DNA, however. They were a team that once they got 23 and you only had 7, that was fine by them. They were just going to put it on cruise control and beat you 30-10. No need to embarrass anyone. I just want to win. And I needed to see that killer instinct. I never saw it from them. The only game I saw it in was against Baltimore at home, where they absolutely destroyed Baltimore. Dismantled them. And that was good to see. I said, okay, maybe you are a team that could be dangerous, especially if you're at home. And by the way they were playing, it looked like they were going to get home field advantage throughout. So after winning 6 straight and getting to 11-1, you said, man, it looks like this AFC playoffs might have to go through Houston. I mean, Houston was head and shoulders above the rest of the teams in the AFC, not by record-wise, but just by the way they were playing. They'd blown Baltimore out, and they were one of the top teams in the AFC. They only had one loss, and that was to Green Bay. And so you're thinking, man, if they could find a way to get to 13-3, 14-2, which seemed really reasonable. I mean, it really seemed like this team would get to 13-3 easily. I mean, the way they had played 12 games and only lost 1. How is it that they lose 3 out of their last 4? No way. They're going to win at least 13 games. They're going to get home field advantage throughout. And then teams are going to have to come to Houston in order to go to the Super Bowl in the AFC. That could be a tough proposition for some teams because Houston has been playing really good football at home all season long. But then that Detroit game on Thanksgiving was kind of a sign of things to come. That was not a good showing by the Texans. They struggled in that game, and they should have lost. They were outplayed by Detroit. The officials gave them a gift on a Justin Forsett touchdown. They were going to overturn it, but Jim Schwartz, being the hothead that he is for Detroit, challenges a play that is not reviewable by the challenge flag. You can't throw it. If you do, it negates the ability of the officials to actually look at the play. You get a gift. The game goes to overtime. Detroit squanders opportunities, misses field goals. You end up winning that football game. But it was not pretty. It wasn't the type of performance that you're looking for from an 11-1 team. But you don't care because it's a win. And in the league, a win is a win is a win. You'll take them any way you can get them. But that set the stage for their final 4 games. They were not sharp. And these were some games that you said, okay, we're going to find out who the Houston Texans really are. You got Indianapolis twice, a team that is trailing you in a division but has been playing solid football all season long. You've got the New England Patriots on the road in New England. What are you going to do? That's going to be a huge matchup. And so you want to see what these Texans are going to do. Well, they lost 3 out of their final 4. And they really struggled. And losing 3 out of your final 4 after starting 11-1, and not only losing 3 out of 4, not only not going into the playoffs with momentum, but losing home field throughout. And not only losing home field throughout, losing a first-round bye in the process. This Texans team threw away everything that they had worked so hard for in a matter of a month. Losing 3 out of 4 did irreparable damage to their season. Beyond repair, and I thought they were going to lose that opening matchup in Wild Card Weekend because they were in a tizzy. They were in a downward spiral. But they were able to salvage their season, win at home in Wild Card Weekend. It wasn't pretty. Cincinnati should have beat them. If Andy Dalton hits A.J. Green at the end of that football game in stride for a touchdown, Cincinnati probably wins that football game. But they didn't. Houston held on and they got the win, 19-13. So they move on to the divisional round of the postseason where the New England Patriots are waiting in the wings. And you knew that the Houston Texans didn't stand a chance in hell of winning that football game. That's when you're on your knees, tying your shoes, and you look up and there's a guy doing a 360 reverse dunk. And you're like, damn, I got to play against him. And not only does he do that, but then he just hits 7 straight threes. Nothing but net. And you're like, man, damn, that guy's good. I got to check him? Yeah, that's your assignment right there. You got to check him. That's what the Houston Texans were up against when they were playing the New England Patriots. You just knew they didn't stand a chance. I asked the question for the preview in that game, what was different? What changed since the last time you played this team in the regular season and was blown out of the stadium? What has changed since then? The only thing that the Texans had the ability to change, and they blew it, was the venue. That game could have been played in Houston instead of New England. They blew it. They had to go back to Gillette Stadium, the scene of the crime the last time. And the same thing basically happened again. They were beat to a pulp, to an oblivion by the New England Patriots. Game was never really close. And that's your season. And so it begs the question to ask, are the Houston Texans good enough to get over the hump? Because as they're constructed right now, the answer is no, they're not. Because they don't do enough to you offensively to scare anybody. And what I mean by that is Dre, Andre Johnson, your number 1 receiver. 112 catches, basically 1,600 yards, 1,598 on the season. Double figures in touchdowns. Monster. What do you have across from him? What are you going to tell me? What are you going to tell me? You going to tell me Kevin Walter? DeVere Posey? Keyshawn Martin? What are you going to say? What do you have? What's across from Andre Johnson? That's a question I've been asking for years. Who's your other threat? Why should I be afraid of anyone else other than Andre Johnson? Then you look at the running game. You give it to Arian Foster 315 times. He gets you over 1,400 yards. That's nice. But you wear him down in the postseason. Now it comes postseason time. He's gotten the ball way too many times during the regular season. That's why you had Ben Tate. That's why you had Forsett. Give Arian Foster a break. I thought you ran him into the ground. I thought this Texans team just really overextended themselves. And then they don't have the personnel to take that next step. Matt Schaub wasn't sharp in the postseason. I'll give you an example. The first possession, out of the gate, the Texans have a chance to set the tone against the Patriots. Matt Schaub throws a beautiful ball to your fullback out of the backfield. He drops it. Okay. It would have been a touchdown. He drops it. You can't cry over spilled milk. That was second down. You still have an opportunity to score a touchdown. So what, James Casey just dropped the football? Get it done on the next play. Andre Johnson runs a beautiful route, gets open in the back of the end zone. Schaub air-mails it by about 3 yards over his head. You got to settle for a field goal. You lose the football game. It's plays like that, opportunities that are squandered like that, that makes me think this Texans team may never be able to get over the hump. And look, there's been a question in the offseason, is Matt Schaub the guy? Of course he is. Matt Schaub, 22 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, over 4,000 yards. Again, he's the man for this offense. Get him more weapons out wide. Lestar Jean isn't the answer. I've already talked about all the other guys. Get a legit number 2. Extend the career of Andre Johnson. Why don't you? Owen Daniels is nice at tight end. Arian Foster is a beast at the running back position. You need to extend his career as well by giving him less carries. He's a guy that catches you 50 balls out of the backfield. And you want to hand it to him 315 times? This man will be done by the time he's 29 years old if you continue on this pace. Not to mention, you get to the postseason, he's worn down. Then you look at the defensive side of the football. J.J. Watt gives you 20.5 sacks. Antonio Smith gives you another 7. You have about 45 sacks on the season as a team. J.J. Watt gives you 20.5 of those. Antonio Smith gives you 7. That's half of your production right there. You need other guys to contribute. You don't have enough defensively. Your linebacking core, when those injuries started to mount, man, did it show just how thin you were at the linebacker position. Look, you don't go into the season thinking that your best linebacker, Brian Cushing, is going to go down for the season. No one comes into the season thinking that way. But in the event that guys go down, you need to have other people that can step in. And in the middle linebacker position, especially, you didn't have that. Out wide, I think you have some stuff. You got Whitney Merciless, Brooks Reed. You got a slew of guys, Connor Baldwin, that can step in and get it done for you. But I'm not sure if in the middle you have enough depth there. Brady James was on his last legs when he came to you. So he's really not the guy that you should be looking to be the answer of the future. Cushing goes down, and all of a sudden now you got to go on the street and find someone like a Barrett Root. Ugh, yuck. Hence your defense falls off the cliff. And you don't get it done when the postseason comes around. So looking at this team moving forward, Schaub is your quarterback. Stop with that nonsense. If you're in Houston and you're talking crazy, stop it. Matt Schaub is your quarterback. He needs to be better, especially in the postseason, but he's your guy. You're not going to go out there and find, look, it's tough times out there. Finding a quarterback is like finding a job in this economy. You don't want to give away your job. You don't quit your job unless you know you've got another one waiting in the wings. You don't get rid of your starting quarterback unless you know you have another one that's a proven commodity in this league. If you don't have another quarterback that you know can come in and do what Schaub is doing and do it better, and then you better not do something as rash and crazy as get rid of Matt Schaub. Those questions shouldn't even be asked right now because you don't have another option at quarterback. So I want to dispel that right now. Stop it. Matt Schaub is your quarterback. What you need to do is get better as a football team, period. You need to be better at spelling guys and not running your prized possessions into the ground. Andre Johnson needs help at receiver. Yeah, you drafted a slew of guys. I don't think any of those guys are number 2 receivers. None of them. I don't think Keyshawn Martin is. I don't think DeBeer Posey is. I don't think Lestar Jean is. I think you need to draft a receiver. A number 2. Kevin Walter, he's nice. He's not a number 2. And you've been parading him out there for years, perpetrating a fraud as if he was a number 2 receiver. Stop it. You got Owen Daniels at the tight end position. That's nice. On defense, J.J. Watt is an absolute unmovable force. And he's going to be that way for many years to come. You've got yourself an uncaged animal in J.J. Watt. Great. Antonio Smith, another nice piece right beside him. Awesome. Connor Barwin, someone you need to hang on to. I think he's a invaluable commodity and asset on your team that you need to have back. Brooks Reed, solid piece. But when you get to the interior of that linebacking core in the middle, you need help. You need more help. Because I don't think Tim Dobbins, I don't think that Brady James is the answer next to Cushion. You need help inside. Looking at back half, and I think you're okay. I would like to see some upgrades to that safety position, but I think you're okay. Especially out wide at corners. Jonathan Joseph, he's a pretty solid corner in this league. He's really good. Sometimes I feel like he's overrated, but he's a really good corner. You won't hear me badmouth Jonathan Joseph. But across from him, whether it's Kareem Jackson or whoever else you want to trot out there, they can be sketchy at times. That's something you need to pay attention to. You also can use a defensive tackle as well. I mean, how many years can you get by with Sean Cody? He's undersized. He's not what you need in a 3-4 defense. You need to get some beef, some real girth. You could use a real space eater in the middle of that defense. I think that would help J.J. Watt tremendously. If that pocket starts collapsing and you can't go anywhere, Antonio Smith coming from one side, J.J. Watt coming from the other, oh man, how great would that be? I mean, J.J. Watt already is getting 20 sacks without really any help on that line except for Antonio Smith. Just imagine if that pocket is collapsing as well, because Sean Cody isn't moving anyone anywhere. So defensive tackle, that's also a need. And if a defensive tackle is there with that 27th pick, by all means, draft it. That first round selection is a receiver. Okay, I can go for that. Inside linebacker, I'm all for it. But it needs to be one of those three positions if you ask me. And look, the Texans are in a position, and all these teams in the back half of the draft for the most part are in the position that you draft the best player available on your board. And you may not need him at the time, but you can never have too much of anything. If it's talent, there's a space on your roster for it. So if you're the Texans, draft the best player available. Let's just hope, for your sake, it's a defensive tackle, an inside linebacker, or a receiver, because you could use any one of those positions. And also, on a side note that has absolutely nothing to do with what I was just talking about, you let go of Trendon Holiday way too soon. I thought that he was a guy that could have been an asset for you in the regular season. You let him go. He went to Denver. He was an asset for the Denver Broncos, as you saw on Showcase in the postseason. You blew it. You got nothing out of your return game, and the reason you didn't is because you cut Trendon Holiday away too soon. Sometimes patience is a virtue, and you didn't have enough patience. You didn't exhibit enough patience with Trendon Holiday. Yeah, he wasn't doing anything early on in the season. Wasn't a reason for you to cut him, though. And then, yeah, I know the rash of injuries came, and someone had to go. But did it have to be Trendon Holiday? You couldn't find some other fat on your roster to trim off? It had to be Trendon Holiday? I know you felt like you had Keyshawn Martin and other guys that could serve as a return man, but you can't replace dynamic players. And Trendon Holiday has the speed to be a dynamic player in the National Football League, and you blew it. And that's going to do it for the Houston Texans Lab Follow-Up. I thank you for joining me today. Join me tomorrow as we start revving it up. We're going into our double headers. That means we'll be talking about two teams who will be selecting in the upcoming draft in the same day, as we want to finish these teams this week. So we'll be talking about the 28th and 29th team, respectively, in the Denver Broncos and the New England Patriots. So stay tuned for that tomorrow, as I'll be back in the Lab Follow-Up doing those teams. I thank you for joining me today as I was talking about the Houston Texans. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.
Houston, Texas.